Welcome to Pro Football's first 50 years, where we take the past and we bring it back to life. Now, I'm strictly talking the first 50 years here, 1920 to 1970. I mean, especially if you're going to go back to a game like in the 20s or the 30s, you can go online, obviously, find out who won the game, what the box score was, who scored a touchdown, how far a field goal was, somebody to kick, what the attendance was, where the game was played at. You might even be able to find starting lineups for each team, but exactly what happened during the game? Well, thanks to old newspaper articles, we get to take a little bit of a deeper dive into each and every game during the first 50 years of professional football. Now, a little news flash here for you. Ain't no fancy videos or nothing like that going on. All there is you and me for the next 30 to 60 minutes. So if that's all right with you, let's get it on. And today's game wasn't much of a game, but October 25th, 1959, the Washington Redskins visit Cleveland Stadium to take on the Cleveland Browns. And there's pretty much two teams at like the opposite end of the spectrum here. I mean, the Cleveland Browns, obviously, with Paul Brown as the head coach, was just every year, just perennial, chance to make it to the championship, if not win the championship. They were All-American Football Conference from 46 to 49. They won every championship there 4 straight years. They won the championship in 1950, but at 51, 52, 53, 55, they were in the championship game. Just every year. Not this year, they wouldn't go to the championship, but 64, they won the championship. 65, they were in the championship. They were in the playoffs in 67, 68, 69, 71, 72. They're almost not in the playoff. They always had a good enough team to make it to the playoffs. The Redskins, they were not so good. I mean, even if you look at the roster, if you look at the Browns roster, if you include Paul Brown, even had Chuck Noll on their roster. Wasn't the greatest football player, but we know he can coach a football team, that's for sure. Browns, just looking at it real fast, had like at least 7, if you count Paul Brown, said the coach, had like 7 Hall of Famers. The Redskins, I don't think had anybody on there that went to the Hall of Fame. They had badly coached. Mike Nixon was not a great coach. This year, the Redskins would win 3 games. They were 3-9, which would be pretty good. The next season, they only won 1 game. So, as I said, Paul Brown every year had them. As I said, they didn't make the championship game, but every year they were a winner. Every year. And I said the Redskins just wouldn't really have a good team until 1969, just for that one season when Vince Lombardi took over in 1970. They took a little step back. I think they finished 6-8. They had a good offense. Their defense wasn't that good. But in 1971, when George Allen stepped in, they still had that same offense. But George Allen, being a defensive-minded coach, came in and rebuilt the roster, and the defense was tough as nails. And obviously, they went to the playoffs in 71. They went to the Super Bowl in 72. He was there from 71 to 77, and he never had a losing season with the Redskins. So better times were ahead for the Redskins, but not right now. Slim pickings. Let's take a look at the schedule, shall we? And in fact, the Redskins were 2-2 at one point. And actually, right now, and they were just going to, kind of pretty much fall to pieces after this here. Let's share the screen. Let's see. Here we go. Here's the Redskins. All right, here we go. $19.59. Here we go. All right, they were actually going into this game. They're actually 2-2. They managed. They lost their first one. Then they won the next 2 games. They were 2-1. Actually, 2-1. They tied for first place in the Eastern Division, but then the wheels fell off the bus, and they would only win 1 game the rest of the way. And somehow they managed to beat the defending world champions and the 1959 to be champions, the Baltimore Colts. Somehow they beat them 27-24 at home. Colts only lost 3 games all year. One of them was to Washington, who only won 3 games all year. But you can see here, I mean, they just lost like everything. They lost, what was it, 8 of the last 9 games. They weren't the worst team in the Eastern Division, but I mean, they were certainly very, very bad. And you can even see it in the exhibition the practice games, the exhibition games, whatever you want, preseason, whatever you want to call it. I mean, they were not very good there either. They won the first one, but then they lost all the other ones. I mean, yeah, the defense was not very good. The Browns, however, on the other hand, were right there, neck and neck, all season long with the Giants until it got toward the end. They lost 3 games in a row, and you just kind of took them out. They lost 2 tough games at home by 1 point. They're very good teams. Then they got blown out by the Giants in New York, and then it was all over with after that. As you can see, I mean, they lost to the Giants, who during the regular season perhaps were maybe the best team because they only had 2 losses. The Colts, who won the championship, had 3 losses. So the Browns lost to the Giants 10-6. Then they lost 48-7. The Giants did have the best defense in the NFL that year. As you see, the Browns only scored 13 points against the Giants in those 2 games. They lost. The Browns lost a tough one to Pittsburgh. Then they lost, this to the Giants. But then they started winning. So coming in, here against the Steelers, they only had 2 losses. So they were right there for first place. But then these three losses right here in a row. 1 point loss to the Steelers, a 1 point loss to the 49ers. Steelers had a winning record. The 49ers actually were 7-5. They actually had a winning record. Then they got blown out by the Giants here, and it was all over with after that. But you can see they were, a very good team. Very, very good team. As I said, if you look at their roster, I mean, they had like a ton of good players, ton. Most of them were on the offensive side, but I mean, having Bobby Mitchell and Jim Brown in the backfield, I mean, that should have just straight up been illegal. I mean, you look at back then, I mean, you got like Jim Taylor and Paul Hornung in the Packers backfield, obviously both them in the Hall of Fame. But I mean, obviously they're both very good, but they needed, blocking. Jim Taylor was very tough to take down. Paul Hornung, obviously, he was fantastic. And Paul Hornung could kick, he could pass, he could run, he could block, he could catch, he could do everything. But I mean, you get Bobby Mitchell and Jim Brown, you give them like a sliver of an opening, and they could take it to this. I mean, they were just scary, the 2 guys. And this game, pretty much showed it. As you can see here, right? The Redskins, October 25th, 1959, the Redskins, 34-7. The Browns would wind up winning. I mean, it was not much of a game. Not much of a game at all. Let's see. The game was played at Cleveland Stadium, home of many exciting. Let me see if I can pop it up here. Many exciting games. Unfortunately, where the Indians played there, right? The Browns played there, and then of course, they wind up taking the Browns, leaving the Cleveland, and moving them to the Ravens, which still disgusts me to this day. But let's see here. Cleveland Stadium. Bam. All right. Let me share this here. Yeah. All right. Pop this up here. Share my screen. I mean, it's been around for a while. Hold a lot of fans. It was just just. Cleveland Stadium, commonly known as Municipal Stadium or Cleveland Municipal Stadium, was a multi-purpose stadium in Cleveland, Ohio. It is one of the early multi-purpose stadiums built to accommodate both baseball and football. The stadium opened in 1931 and is best known as the longtime home of the Cleveland Indians from 1932 to 33 and again from 37 to 93. And the Cleveland Browns of the National Football League from 46 to 95. So even when the Browns were in the All-American Football Conference from 46 to 49, they still played at Cleveland Stadium. So you can see, I mean, they were at Cleveland Stadium for like 50 years. It's just a shame, that they just couldn't get something done, and they had to pick Cleveland up and move them down to Baltimore. But at least Cleveland does still have it. I mean, it disgusts me to this day. If you actually take the Cleveland Browns out of Cleveland and move them to another, I absolutely hate that. Absolutely hate that. The stadium hosted 3 All-American Football Conference championship games, 6 NFL championship games, served as one of the host venues of the 48 and 54 World Series. Let's see, All-Star games. It was the site of the Dog Pound, Red Right 88, and the Drive. Oh, man. Boy, I'll tell you what, it's some absolutely amazing. Red Right 88, I believe that was 1980. Let's see. And, of course, the Drive, that was in 86. I mean, the Broncos took over, I think, on their 1 yard line, 1 or 2 yard line, and John Elway took them to send the game into overtime. A lot of fantastic games there. Good old Art Modell. I can't stand the guy. Former Browns owner Art Modell took over control of the stadium from the city in the 1970s. While his organization made improvements to the facility, it continued to decline. Now, I can understand it, but, I don't know. Once again, the Indians played the final home game at the stadium in October 1993 and moved to Jacobs Field the following season. Although plans were announced to renovate the stadium for the use by the Browns, in 1995, Modell announced his intentions to move the team to Baltimore, citing the state of the Cleveland Stadium as a major factor. I just understand because, I mean, if the Indians played the final home game at the stadium and then moved to another stadium, why couldn't the Browns do the same? Maybe not move to Jacobs Field, but I don't know. Anyway, the Browns played their final game at the stadium in December 1995. Bill Belichick was the coach of the team then. After, obviously, of course, they moved and, of course, they became the Ravens. And then, of course, the team was officially deactivated for 3 seasons, and then the city was required to construct a new stadium on the Cleveland Stadium site. Cleveland Stadium was demolished in 1996 to make way for the Cleveland Browns Stadium, which opened in 1999. Now, once again, I don't understand why. Why couldn't have Cleveland or something done something like that? If that was why, I don't know. Why are you going to lose an iconic team? Right? Why couldn't they just knocked it down? Had the Browns play someplace else, kind of close, build them a brand new stadium, right? After 3 years, bring them back. I don't know. But, let's see. The impetus for Cleveland Stadium came from city manager William R. Hopkins, Cleveland Indians president Ernest Bernard, real estate magnate, and future Indians president Alva Bradley, and the Van Sweringen brothers, who thought that the attraction of a stadium would benefit area commerce in general and their own commercial interests in downtown Cleveland in particular. Smart people. However, some have incorrectly stated that it was built in a failed bid to attract the 1932 Summer Olympics, which had been awarded to Los Angeles in 1923. Let's see. Another common misconception is that Cleveland Stadium was a works progress administration project. November 1928, Cleveland voters passed $2.5 million levy for a fireproof stadium on the lakefront. Actual construction cost overran that amount by $500,000. So $3 million. You can see here a picture of the Cleveland Stadium under construction in 1931. The stadium was dedicated on July 1st, 1931. Hosted a boxing match, Max Schmeling and Young Stribling, with 37,000 fans in attendance. Whew, wow. Obviously, the Indians were tenants there. Got the view of center field in 1993. Lake Erie is visible just outside the stadium, right back here. As some people call it the mistake by the lake. Here we go, the Browns. Here we go. Aerial photo during the last Browns game played at the stadium December 17, 1995 against the Bengals. Bill Belichick, as I said, was the coach at the time. The Browns, originally members of the All-American Football Conference, began playing at the facility in 1946 and played there through 1995, like 50 seasons. Wow. Stadium was the site of the All-American Football Conference Championship game in 46, 48, and 49, and all Browns wins, and the Browns won in 1947 as well. Browns joined the NFL in 1950 and hosted the championship game in 1950 and won. They hosted it in 1952 and lost. They hosted the championship game in 1954, and they won. Let's see. Hosted it in 1964, and they lost. I'm sorry, they won. That's when they beat the Colts. Then they hosted it, the NFL championship game in 68, and they lost. Then they went to the championship game in 1969. They lost to the Vikings. They won the titles in 50, 54, and 64. First Browns game at the stadium was also the first All-American Football Conference game when the Browns hosted the Miami Seahawks on September 6, 1946. The Browns won the game 44-0, drew 60,000 fans. Are you freaking kidding me? Wow. What was then a record for a professional football crowd? You bet it right it was. Well, I know that the Giants, when they played the Bears on December 6, 1925, the Polo Grounds drew more than 60,000 fans. So I'm not so sure how correct that is. There was possibly 70,000 fans on December 6, 1925, when the Bears and Red Grange played the Giants at the Polo Grounds. So I'm not so sure how correct that is. But during the 1980s, the center field bleachers at the east end of the stadium were home to many of the club's most avid fans and became known as the Dog Pound, after the barks that fans made to disrupt opposing teams' offensive plays. The fans were copying Browns players Hanford Dixon and Frank Minifield, who frequently appeared to bark to each other and to the opposition. Some of the fans even wore dog masks and threw dog biscuits at opposing players. Well, sometimes even other things got thrown too. Sometimes it got kind of nasty there. Dog Pound was included in the design of the Cleveland Browns Stadium, built on the same site as Cleveland Stadium, where the east end zone was also had the bleacher seating. Stadium was also the site of two notable moments in Cleveland sports and Browns history, both bad. 1980, the divisional playoff game on January 4th. What a freaking cold game that was. My goodness. Browns quarterback Brian Sight was intercepted in the end zone with less than a minute remaining in the game, resulting in a 14-12 loss to the Oakland Raiders. Now, the reason why he threw it into the end zone was because they tried, I think, multiple field goals, and they could not kick a field goal. And they also, both their extra points, that's why they only have 12 points, were no good. So to try to think that they could possibly maybe kick a field goal from 30, 35, whatever it was, yards out, it was probably didn't think that could happen. But all they needed was a field goal, and they could have won. But they threw an interception in the end zone, and what a cold game. Game has since been referred to by the name of the pass play, Red Right 88. 6 years later, during the 86 AFC Championship game on January 11, John Elway led the Broncos on what referred to as the drive. 98-yard touchdown drive. With 5:32 left, they tied the game and sent it in overtime. The Broncos ultimately prevailed 23-20. Now that season in particular was just playoff was phenomenal because the week before the Jets, it was possible the Giants and the Jets were going to meet in the Super Bowl. Well, the Jets were winning 20-10 with I don't know what the hell it was, 5 minutes to go in the game or something. They were playing in Cleveland, 5-6 minutes ago, whatever it was, up 20-10. Browns scored 10 points in the final, 4 minutes, whatever it was of the game, sent it in overtime, and the Browns won in overtime 23-20. So back-to-back overtime games. I think both were 23-20. Both overtime games, both phenomenal games that year, 1986. Whew. Final game of the stadium was held on December 17, 1995, an emotional 26-win over the Bengals. The Browns' final game before the franchise was officially deactivated until 1999. At the end of the game, many fans cut and removed their seats. Can't blame them. Football, Indians and Rams, because remember the Cleveland Rams were there, and the Cleveland Indians played there too. A lot of teams back in the day had names of professional baseball teams: the Brooklyn Dodgers, the New York Yankees, the New York Giants. Let's say, I think possibly the Washington Senators. I know the Detroit Tigers, the Cleveland Indians, the Pittsburgh Pirates. A lot of teams had the same names as their baseball team that they shared the ballpark with. Prior to the arrival of the Browns, the stadium was briefly the home field for two other NFL teams, the Cleveland Indians in 1931 and the Cleveland Rams from 1936 to 1937, and again from 1939 to 1941. 1945 was the last year that the Cleveland Rams were in Cleveland. They moved to Los Angeles in 1946. Football Indians played two home games there in 1931 season, a 6-win over the Brooklyn Dodgers, and a 14-0 loss to the Chicago Cardinals. The team drew a crowd of around only 2,000 spectators for the September 26th game against Brooklyn and 10,000 for the loss to the Cardinals on November 8th. The Rams were founded in 1936 as members of the Second American Football League and joined the NFL in 1937. They played home games at the stadium their first two seasons before moving to the smaller Shaw Stadium in 1938. The Rams returned to the stadium in 1939 and played home games there through the 1941 season before moving to League Park for the remainder of the time in Cleveland. The team returned to the stadium one last time to host the 1945 NFL Championship game, a 15-14 win in what was referred to the Rams' final game in Cleveland before the team relocated to Los Angeles. So, but I mean, you can also see here, I mean, the capacity was just, wow. Go back here. There was just big stadium. But back in the 30s and the 40s, it could hold 83,000 people. I mean, that's a huge stadium. But it's just a shame. I mean, it's a shame they couldn't, get something done. Yeah, it is what it is. But a lot of the stadiums, some of them, like Wrigley Field, still around. Fenway Park, still around. Others just, they couldn't save them. Shame. But the thing I said, that, thankfully, Cleveland still does have a team there, thankfully. But, I mean, it's just a shame that they had to up and move and go to a different city before something actually got done. Because then they knocked it down and rebuilt the stadium. And I don't know why they couldn't have just done that. Right? Can you go play someplace else? We'll give you a beautiful stadium, right? Go play someplace else for a couple of years. When you come back, you'll have a beautiful stadium. But once again, it's all about the Benjamins, and that's sometimes it makes things kind of nasty. But anyway, so the for this game here, and rightfully so, the Browns were 7-point favorites. So let's go to the October 25th, 1959 edition of the Lima Times. All right. Share the screen. All right, the Lima Times. Where are we at here? October 25th, 1959 of the Lima Times. Browns favored by 7 over the Redskins. Yep. Let's see here. The Rams, 2-2, are 11.5-point favorites to hand Detroit 0-4, another defeat when they clash in the Coliseum. The Browns 2-2 are 7-point choices to down the Redskins 2-2. Hey, if you got some money to spend, take just pick the Browns. Give the points away and take the Browns. Strangest thing about the mediocre showing to date of the Cleveland Browns is that no one talks of it in terms of a failure on the part of the team's star fullback, Jim Brown. He's the strongest threat the club has, and with the exception of one Monday Day show against the Chicago Cardinals, he hasn't been able to break away from the long gainer that he became so famous for during his first 2 seasons in the league. Neither do the followers of the club grumble about the erratic performances of halfback Bobby Mitchell. Well, he has a good game this time. A speedy Illinois alumnus who has even money to win or lose a game for you every time he gets his hands on the football. I mean, both those guys could just take it the whole way. I mean, it's unbelievable. To insiders who watch the club work out every day, the slowness of Brown to break into Superman form is a result of 2 circumstances, both extremely logical. First, there is the fact that each team the Browns have played this year concentrated on him in an effort to hold him down. He is the object of fierce gang tackling efforts any time he runs with the ball. There are some knowledgeable football men who fully expect to see him suffer serious injury before the season is over, and it never happened. I think in his whole career, he missed one half of football. Freaking unbelievable. Unbelievable. The amount of times he handled the ball, the fierce tackling he would get, unbelievable. Secondly, there is the knee injury suffered by the team's top guard and captain, Mike McCormick. The former Kansas University star is rounding back into form now, and it may be that today will be the day both Brown and McCormick start to gel in the matter they must if the Browns are to be real contenders in this year's race. The one player whose performance has placed most under fire is quarterback Milt Plum, the 6'1" third-year quarterback from Penn State. Every time he goes back to pass, his decision to throw or run, and even his decision to pass to a particular man rather than another, is a matter to be questioned. Browns fans accustomed to winning the division title every year feel it is Plum who is holding them back in their efforts to win it this year. Now, they're so used to Otto Graham from 46 to 55. Every year he took them to the championship game. They didn't win the championship every year, but from 10 straight years, Otto Graham took them to a championship game. So then once Otto Graham retires and in steps somebody else, they're under a microscope, right? And they got all the weight of Cleveland on their back. So basically, Milt Plum is in a no-win situation here. If he wins the championship, he's supposed to do that. If he doesn't win the championship, it doesn't take him to the championship, they don't win the division, you're a horrible quarterback. So he was in a no-win situation. He was known as an indecisive quarterback last season. It is a reputation that has stuck with him through the early part of the season, even though it no longer holds. Plum is still not the quick release kind of thrower that either Norm Van Brocklin or Bobby Lane are. He is deliberate, but he no longer can be accused of being indecisive. I frankly think that his performance at the spot this year has been vastly superior to last season's. Men regarded as having some knowledge of the game say the same thing. For example, after the New York Giants game, which the Browns lost 10-6, the man with the most praise for Plum was Jim Lee Howell, the Giants coach. I think Milt has improved tremendously this season, Howell said. I remember last year when he played them, it seemed like he would get frozen back there while waiting for a play to develop. It was this as much as anything that made our linemen look so good when they charged in on him. He never seemed able to make up his mind who he wanted to throw to. The more you rushed him, the less he knew. He never seemed to be in command of the situation. He let the defense play him rather than take the initiative. But he's different now, and one play out there today was a good example. And we're going to there's a play that they have actually in one of these articles they have drawn up and everything like that. I'm going to show you. We had him trapping on the line of scrimmage in a spot where last year he would have either eaten it or thrown along and risked an interception. This time he just sort of reached around and threw that little short pass to Jim Brown and gained yardage instead of taking a big loss. That's the difference in him this year, Howell concluded. He's got confidence now. I talked with Redskin and Coach Joe Tereshinski in the press box before last Sunday's game with the Chicago Cardinals. Tereshinski, who was scouting the Browns for today's game, said virtually the same thing. He's a good one. If he were made a free agent, there isn't a team in the league that wouldn't like to have him. He's young and he's got size. He's got a good arm and he can run well. What more can you hope for from a young guy just starting out? What Browns fans, long accustomed to a high standard of excellence, hope for is that Plum will perform at the spot in a fashion that will ensure them another division title. They hope for it, but none have confidence he can do it, and that's why there is so much talk about Milt Plum. Some random shots on the Redskins. They come into this game with a record of 2 wins and 2 losses. They have split 2-game series with the Cardinals and the Steelers. The Redskins played the first 4 games, 2 of them against the Cardinals, 2 of them against the Steelers. Played 4 games and only played against 2 different teams. They split their game series with the Cardinals and the Steelers. They have always been a tough nut for the Browns. Last season, the Browns beat them 21-14 in Cleveland and lost 20-10 down in Washington. The year before, the Skins held the Browns to a 30-30 tie in Washington and lost by a 21-17 score at Municipal Stadium. They have a new coach this year, Mike Nixon, who was Joe Kuharek's backfield assistant for 5 years. He is a good one and is credited with developing the all-time great college backfield of Goldberg, Casano, Chicharito, and Stebbins when he was an assistant under Jock Sutherland at the University of Pittsburgh. Like Sutherland, he is a hard taskmaster. After the opening season loss to the Cardinals, Nixon publicly warned his players they would be fired if they didn't perform at their best in every game they played. He still has them running scared, and this is a game the Skins must win to stay alive. Outstanding Skins players are kicker Sam Baker, tricky little quarterback Eddie LeBaron, and 2 really fine running backs, Don the Bull Bossler and Speedy Jim Potley, who is even faster than Bobby Mitchell, despite the fact he weighs over 200 pounds. The Browns should win it, but it will be far from easy. Well, not so. All right. And we got, another one here. Let's go to the Evening Star. The October 25th, 1959 edition of the Evening Star. This happens all the time. There we go. Redskins pin hopes on stopping Brown, as every team did. The Redskins will call on an old-timers to stop the Cleveland Browns here tomorrow. The Browns boasting a 13-3 edge in the series with 1 tie or 7-point favorites. A crowd of 45,000 or more is expected to see the game. What do we got here? Hold on. 45,000. Whoop. 42,732 saw the game. So they were close. The Washington 11's primary objective is to stop Jim Brown, Cleveland's record-breaking fullback and number 1 ground gainer in the league. It accomplished this mission on one occasion last year, holding Brown to 12 yards on 11 carries. Philadelphia Eagles 66 yards and Detroit 83 were the only other teams to hold him under 100 yards. Linebackers Chuck Drzanovich and Ralph Felton, 2 veterans having big years, are primed for Brown. Up front, it'll be part of Bob Toneff's work to put the skids under him. Will Renfro and Chet Ostrovsky, when he's in the lineup, also will be charged with slowing Brown, but Toneff has outshone both in the last couple of games. Although crippled, the Redskins feel that they have a chance to score an upset. They were close twice last year, bowing 20-10 and 21-14. The year before, Cleveland won 21-17, and the return game rallied for a 30-30 tie. There was a time when the games weren't even close, Cleveland winning almost as it pleased. Coach Mike Nixon will have Jim Potley at halfback again after a week's absence because of an ailing knee. Ed Sutton, who was injured early in the Pittsburgh game, also seems to be sound or nearly so and will play. All right, so let's go to the evening. That's as they say, let the games begin. All right, so we're going to go to the October 26, 1959 edition of the Evening Star. And blackness. Here we go. Frank Gifford of the Giants gets injured. Goodness gracious. Showing against Brown saves job for Eagle Day. He's the Redskins' third string quarterback because the first two couldn't get it done. Ralph Guglielmi, or Ralph the Googe, as I call him, and Eddie LeBaron couldn't get it done. So Eagle Day got a chance to step in there. And Mike Nixon considers the third string quarterback as a starter in Philly the following week. Eagle Day completed 3 passes against the Browns in the waning minutes of yesterday's game in Cleveland, and one of the 4 he threw was intercepted. But the former Mississippi quarterback played well enough in that brief time to save his job with the Redskins. In fact, in the wake of the 34-7 loss to the Browns before, and we'll see here, right? Rushing yardage. This was the same thing as last week that went for the Redskins. The week before, Pittsburgh had 2 of their linebackers. They kept blitzing them, or red dogging them, as they called back in the day. But the Redskins finished the game with minus 13 yards in passing. They had 23 yards passing, but they lost 36 yards because of sacks. So at the time, at that particular point in time, it was a league record, minus 13 yards in passing. They did this the week before against Pittsburgh at home. So you'll see here, once again, they only had 91 yards passing. They didn't really have much of a passing game. Their running game was not bad. Was not bad at all. But you can see it. I mean, the passing, they completed 8 of 19. They threw 4 interceptions. So, I mean, look here. I mean, only threw 7 incompleted passes. They completed 8 to the Redskins, and they completed 4 passes to the Browns. They lost a fumble. So, once again, it was the same thing as the week before. The Redskins fumbled and bumbled the game away, basically gave the game away to the Steelers with all the turnovers they had. And it was pretty much the same thing here. 4 interceptions and a fumble loss, 5 turnovers. They lost the turnover margin 5-1. You're not going to win many football games with a -4 in the turnover column. The Browns had 172 yards rushing with 240 yards passing. So they had over 400 yards of offense. Coach Mike Nixon may give the little-used Day the starting assignment against the Eagles in Philadelphia Sunday. He's seriously considering it, even though Eddie LeBaron's sprained ankle may be okay by then. Why not? Nixon asked. He throws a nice pass when he gets a chance. He reacts well, and he's fairly fast. I don't think he'll do any worse than what we saw against the Browns. It was ironical as Day completed a pass to Johnny Carson, no relationship, 14 yards on his first try after relieving Ralph the Googe, Guglielmi, late in the final quarter when the Redskins' cause was irrevocably lost. Carson and Eagle were the 2 players Nixon considering releasing to make way for offensive end Ken McAfee, who will be added to the roster for the Eagles game. It was one of the 2 passes the tall Georgian caught for a total of 24 yards. Now the coach isn't sure what he'll do, although he knows a man has got to go to make room for the newcomer. First, he'll take a look at the pictures and see what he sees may. All right, so we're going to go to the next page here, the next one. So we're going to go to the share screen, October 26th, 1959 edition, but we're going to go to page 20 of the Evening Star. And once again, blackness. All right, here we go. All right, so as that article said there, it says, first he'll take a look at the pictures. Now they look at videos. Back then they looked at pictures. And what he sees may cause some other head to roll. Not many jobs are secure after the team's second in net performance in as many weeks. Yeah, the past two games, I mean, just absolutely horrible. With LeBaron still limping, the Googe had another chance to establish himself solidly as the number one quarterback, but missed. He broke Dick James loose for a 39-yard run the first time the Redskins had the ball, but followed with a truant pass that Jim Schaffner intercepted for Cleveland. In all, the Googe completed only 5 of 15 pass attempts for 76 yards and had 3 passes intercepted. Whew. The Googe was injured early. It wasn't entirely his fault. The former Notre Damer and former All-American had a flock of cripples for his supporting cast, including himself. The Googe sprained his ankle early in the game, but with his mother and father in the stands and LeBaron hurt, he insisted on continuing. And Joe Walton's knee kept him out of action again. Bill Anderson, who caught a 28-yard pass from the Googe for the team's lone touchdown in the third period, pulled a leg muscle warming up before the game and wasn't at his best, even though he hauled in 4 passes for 85 yards. Halfback Ed Sutton didn't play, and his running mate, Jim Poterly, was in the game only long enough to catch 1 pass for no gain. With fullback Johnny Olszewski playing halfback on the same side as Carson's end, the Browns didn't have to worry about their deep men getting beat on long throws. It allowed them to concentrate on short passes in the Redskins' ground offense, and they made the most of it. Brown gets 122 yards. Nixon said the team's failure to come through with the big play, especially near the end of the half when the Redskins were repulsed on the Browns' 4-yard line, and the fact that the defense was overworked again were the deciding factors. Record-breaking Jim Brown, held to 12 yards on his home field by the Redskins last year, amassed 122 on 17 carries, putting him over the 3,000-yard mark in his third year of pro football. Whew. Third year, I mean, you figure, that's his third year. He only played 12 games a season back then. And this wasn't even a halfway mark of his third season. This was the 5th game of the season. So although he played 12 games, he wasn't even didn't even take him 2.5 years. It took him, 29 games to get 3,000 yards in a running league back then. And everybody, focused on him, trying to stop him. It took him 29 games to get 3,000 yards. Freaking incredible. Unbelievable. Brown dashed 30 yards for Cleveland's second touchdown in the second period on one of the Redskins' earlier lapses. The threat of Brown's running, as Nixon later pointed out, helped open the air lanes for quarterback Milt Plum, who enjoyed his best day in pro football with 13 completions and 18 passes for 253 yards and 4 touchdowns. We had to play a fairly tight line to try to contain Brown, Nixon said, and that gave Plum a better chance to throw. Mitchell, and this is, this is one of the problems. One of the things with Bobby Mitchell, you give him a little pass and he can just take it the distance. Even so, the Washington pass defense was not exactly brilliant in spots. Now, the week before, the Redskins defense against Bobby Lane and the Steelers was very, very good. Problem was they had so many turnovers that just every time the Redskins turned the ball over, it pretty much just turned into points for the Steelers. But the defense was pretty solid the week before. Well, not so much this time. One spot late in the first period when Plum threw a pass to the Mercury-footed Bobby Mitchell, in the flat, and he went 76 yards to the goal for the first of 2 touchdowns. Plum set this one up with a 4-yard line buck by Brown. followed by a fake in the same sector. Mitchell was wide open with a three-man convoy, and there's pictures that I'm going to show you somewhere. Somewhere I'll show you. Let me see. It wasn't here, was it? No. Oh, I'll show you a picture. Plum's passes to Mitchell. It must be in another article, but there, I'll show you something. Whoops. Plum's passes to Mitchell and Ray Renfro, both good for 16 yards, helped set up the trappings for Brown's touchdown spurt late in the second period. And at that moment, it seemed that it was only a question of how large the score would be. And that's what wound up happening. Curiously, it was only moments later that the Redskins got their big chance to get a touchdown and make a contest of it. Sam Baker punted from his own 28 to the Cleveland 35, where rookie tackle Francis O'Brien from Michigan State accidentally touched the ball as it bounded near the sideline. Emil Karras recovered for Washington at that point. On the next play, Anderson outfought Junior Wren for a pass from the Googe on the four-yard line. And from there, a touchdown seemed certain. But a wide end run by James got nothing. A pass to Anderson was incomplete and almost intercepted by Schaffner, and the Googe lost 6 yards trying to circle left end. It was 4th and 10, goal to go, only seconds remaining, when the Googe overshot the mark on a pass to Anderson in the corner of the end zone. This could have been the game's turning point. Nixon later said that the Redskins gambled on a touchdown rather than take an almost certain 3 points on a field goal, because if we kick it, we've still got to score 2 touchdowns to beat them. The score was only 13-0 as Karras had blocked Lou Groza's first extra point try. A touchdown for the Redskins would have put them in position to take the lead with another and might have forced a change in the Browns' strategy. And for the record, Baker had tried a 41-yard field goal just before Cleveland's first touchdown, the ball hitting the upright on the right side of the goalpost. 3 points then would have made a big difference in the two teams' tactics. Yeah. And I think there's a picture, too, of the ball hitting the goalpost. So I have to show you that. But Cleveland quickly stretched its lead at the outset of the third quarter after rookie Bernie Parrish of Florida intercepted a Googe pass. In 5 plays, the victors went 43 yards to score, with Plum tossing a screen to Mitchell for the last 15, and that would be his second touchdown. Redskins finally struck back, marching 71 yards, including a 15-yard penalty against Cleveland for roughing, for their face-saving score. Wren was the victim again when Anderson faked him nicely out of the way, and the Googe laid the ball right on the mark. Modulewski scores. He's the brother of Dick Modulewski, the defensive lineman for the New York Giants. The Googe threw some bad passes in his 15 attempts, seemingly pitching while off balance or hurrying the throw. The second interception against him, also picked off by Schaffner, was aimed at Olszewski, who was in the clear, but was far short of the receiver. Browns went 60 yards for their fourth touchdown, Plum passing to Preston Carpenter for the last 12. They needed exactly 3 plays to cover 52 yards for their last score. Plum's 39-yard toss to Renfro moved the ball deep into Washington territory, and Ed Modulewski, one-time Maryland star, took a pass for the last 10 yards. Now you can see here, right? Cleveland scored in every quarter, scored 14. So going into the last quarter, it was what we got, 20 to 7. Now, had they'd gone for the field goal when they were down inside like about the 10-yard line, and they gone for it, made it there. Sam Baker's field goal didn't hit the upright. Possibly could have been a 20 to 13 game at the time. But individual stats. Right? You see, I mean, the Redskins, not bad. Bosler, 15 carries for 60 yards. James, 13 for 79. Olszewski, 3 for 18. They ran the ball well. It's just their passing was absolutely atrocious. Brown ran the ball 17 times for 122 yards. Mitchell 7 for 23. But right, I mean, you see here, right, the 4 interceptions by the Redskins. Whew. Horrible, horrible. And meanwhile, right, no interceptions here. Now, Paul Brown's looking ahead for a rough time with the Colts. Paul Brown, whose cool, methodical coaching technique has paid off handsomely for the Cleveland Browns, doesn't go in for the old college handshake with a rival coach after games, but he paused for a word with Coach Mike Nixon of the Redskins after watching his team swamp Nixon's team 34-7 yesterday. Let's not kid around about it, Brown told them. I've got the horses and you haven't. Later in the dressing room, Brown told reporters his squad was beginning to look like the kind of football team I thought we had, which is true. I mean, it's like Jimmy's and Joe's beat X's and O's, and he's got his team is just great team, and the Redskins really don't. Later in the dressing room, Brown told reporters his squad was beginning to look. But he knows he's in for a rough day against the Colts in Baltimore the following weekend. They've got the horses too, he laughed. We'll play our best and see what happens. Center Jim Schrader of the Redskins was out on his feet for about 10 minutes after being knocked insensible on the try for point following his team's long touchdown in the third period. He didn't remember a thing that happened. Now to get knocked senseless on an extra point try. I didn't even know when he scored. He said after the game, I came to on the bench sitting next to Dr. George Resta holding one of those smelling salt things in my hands. It was just Jim's first experience of this nature. The rhubarb that brought both squads running out on the field late in the game resulted from a brief flare-up between John Pollock, Redskins end, and fullback Ed Modzelewski of the Browns. Will Renfro got it in a good lick before referee Ron Gibbs shoot everybody back, but doesn't remember whom he swung on. It was a satisfying day in some respects for the big Emil Karras, rookie tackle from Dayton. He not only blocked Lou Groza's first extra point attempt, but later got in front of one of Lou's 2 field goal tries from the 48-yard line. Groza's second one was wide. Karras also recovered the ball when Sam Baker's punt brushed the leg of rookie Francis O'Brien of Michigan State near the end of the first half. The Redskins' offensive line suffered when Ray Lemek injured his right shoulder and had to leave the game in the first half. Defensive halfback Tom Bratz also got a severe whack on his jawbone. Bill Anderson offered no excuse for his fumble after taking Eagle Day's pass on Cleveland's 36-yard line in the last couple of minutes. Day recovering from a 10-yard loss when snared by a 262-pound Sid Youngelman, 250-pound Floyd Peters, and 237-pound Paul Wiggins sent Bossler up the middle for 16 yards before uncorking the throw to Andy. The later was hit hard, and the ball popped out of his arms like a shot. Whitey Michaels, recovered for the Browns. Nixon doesn't think it's strange that Cleveland's Jim Brown hasn't been seriously injured. He's big at 228 pounds and fast, Mike said, and he's in shape. That's a hard combination to beat. The Browns still make good yardage on botched-up plays. Yesterday, quarterback Jim Nanowski was trapped far behind the line, deep in his own territory late in the final period, but he got away from 3 or 4 Redskins and gained 11 yards before Ben Scotty finally lassoed him on the Redskins' 35. Now, let me show you. There's a picture I forgot to show you here. Jim Brown just picking up some yardage there. All right, this one here. Right, here we go. There you guys, picture of Jim Brown. Jim Brown burst through for a first down for the Browns against the Redskins in yesterday's game at Cleveland. The crashing fullback went up 122 yards and 17 carries as the Browns rocked the Redskins 34-7. Number 45 of the Redskins is Ralph Felton. Now you see here, right? I mean, there's difference in times here, right? You got the Redskins, got like, I guess it's like 2 feathers The back of their helmets, that's the only insignia that they have. The Browns had this was the period of time where they had the numbers on the sides of their helmet. Obviously, Jim Brown is number 32 on the side of his helmet. All right, so let's go to the Cleveland Press, the October 26th, 1959 edition of the Cleveland Press. I got to find it, so give me just a sec. Here we go. All right, who we got? What do we got? Browns aim newfound punch at Colts, but now this here, right? This is the touchdown. Whoops! Oh, let's try to refresh that. There we go. This is the play I'm going to show you. It's the play of the day. Right? He took a little pass. You can see there's 1 Redskin, 2 Redskin, 3, 4, 5, 6. I think it might be another one over here, like 7. 7 or so Redskins, like behind the play. So you can see he's got 3 blockers here. He's out here. There's Bobby Mitchell. He just took a little swing pass, right? He's got blockers out in front of him. He's got 3 blockers out in front of him. There can only be maybe 4 Redskins at the most down the field in front of him, maybe at the most. And he took it all the way. But this is the play of the day. All right, here we go. Play of the day. Can I get it up? There we go. Yeah, it's not bad. Okay, we'll do that. Oh, just a little bit more. All right, Plunk steps back. Brown, the thing here, right? Maybe fakes the handoff to Brown. Of course, everybody in the grandmom is just pinching. Oh, we got to stop Brown because he gets a little hole and he's gone. He's gone. Forget about it. So you got to pay attention up the middle here. So then, of course, Mitchell steps out here. Plum, right there, steps out here. He throws a little pass to him, and he boom. And he's got the convoy down the field. And Renfro comes out, takes the safety. Who is this here? Luke Rosa comes out here. Boom, takes the halfback. What we got here? Smith. He's out here. Who the heck is this here? Hunter. So I mean, coach's dream comes true when what happens on the field looks exactly like what has been drawing on the drawing board. And Paul Brown had the satisfaction yesterday. The action above is the play diagram by Paul Brown below. With Bobby Mitchell taking a short flare pass from Milt Plum and racing 76 yards from the Browns' first touchdown yesterday. Plum faked the handoff to Jim Brown up the middle, who plunged into the line to tie down the Redskins' middle linebacker. Yep. Lou Groza pulled out to block the Skins' right cornerback, and Ray Renfro cut across to get the right safety man. And one of the keys to the perfect execution, Redskin right linebacker Emil Karras, number 63, blitzed. Right here. Came in for a blitz. And by the time he got he passed out here, Bobby Mitchell's out over here running, and this guy ain't never catching up with him. Never. Thus taking himself out of the play. Note above, the Brown center Art Hunter, number 56, guard Jimmy Ray Smith, 64, and Renfro have formed an advanced guard for Mitchell as prescribed. In the diagram, Brown's right tackle Mike McCormick, 74, and right guard John Wooten are shown in the background after making their blocks at the line, and Jim Brown, 32, is on the ground. Redskin right tackle Will Renfro and right end Chet Ostrovsky and linebacker Karras pursue in vain. The only Redskin who got a shot at Mitchell was safety man Gary Glick, not shown, who came all the way from the left side but failed to bring down Mitchell. So Glick is over here. So the pass was here, and you got Bobby Mitchell just screaming down the field here. You got to be on your horses to have a prayer of catching that dude. Was not meant to be. All right. National Football League games come in 3 sizes: big, bigger, and biggest. Each of the 12 regular season games is a big one, and if you're good enough and lucky enough, you'll end up in the biggest one of them all, the Championship Clash. The middle classification, bigger, is reserved for those few extra special games that make or break a team, and the Browns are staring one of them in the face today. It's next Sunday's Whopper with the defending champion Colts in Baltimore. The Browns did much for their own morale with yesterday's 34-7 victory over Washington before 42,732 fans at the stadium. It was Cleveland's first solid offensive display of the year and kept the Browns in the footsteps of the New York Giants. But tackling the Colts Goliath of the Western Division is a tremendous task, and failure could damage the Browns' title hopes beyond repair. The opportunistic Giants, with triumphs over Los Angeles, Cleveland, and Pittsburgh, are over the hump in their schedule and figure to be difficult to overtake, even with Frank Gifford nursing sore ribs for the next 2 weeks. But the future had only a minor tempering effect on the Browns' elation. The players feel good because this is the way they want to look on the field, said Paul Brown. Bobby Mitchell, Jim Brown, Milt Plum, and the Browns' tenacious defensive unit heaped abuse on the crippled Redskins. Plum had his most productive day with 4 scoring tosses and 13 completions and 18 attempts for 253 yards. Mitchell confounded the Skins with his speed and elusiveness to score 2 of the TDs, and Ed Modzelewski and Preston Carpenter took the other payoff passes. Brown ripped off another 122 yards on only 17 carries and accounted for Cleveland's other score with a 30-yard run, longest of the season for the team. Jim's sorties up the middle, made easier by the loosening effect of Cleveland's success with flare and screen passes, jumped his 3-year pro yardage total to 3,028 in 29 games. Whew. Washington's touchdown, which came midway in the third quarter on a 28-yard pass from Ralph the Googe to Bill Anderson, was the only 6th one given up by the Browns' defense this fall. The unit has allowed a total of only 48 points, by far the best showing in the entire league. The secondary showed its alertness by intercepting 4 passes. Jim Schaffner picked off 2, and Bernie Parrish and Warren Lahr grabbed 1 apiece. One of Schaffner's efforts saved a TD, and he wrecked another scoring pass by batting down the ball in the end zone. Mitchell sailed 76 yards with a flare pass in the first quarter, and Brown climaxed a 69-yard drive with his scoring run in the second quarter to give Cleveland a 13-0 halftime lead. Brown shook free by sliding around the outside after finding the intended hole filled on the right side of the Redskin line. Mitchell took a screen pass and picked his way 15 yards for a touchdown early in the second half before the Skins got theirs over on a 71-yard march. Plum, running for his life after being trapped on a rollout, spotted Carpenter alone in the end zone and tossed 12 yards for a score early in the fourth quarter, and less than 4 minutes later pitched to Modzelewski on a flare for a 10-yard touchdown. Paul Brown said in the jubilant dressing room, the Browns, that he didn't want to talk about the Baltimore Colts. He asked that the subject be skipped or deferred to allow him and his boys time to relish what is known in sports as a laugher. They certainly moved the ball in a variety of ways, principally on terra firma, as they took the Washington Redskins apart to stay in contention for the Eastern Division title. It was nice, but the grim fact remains that the schedule is still most ominous, starting with the most threatening date of all, the virtually unbreakable Colts next Sunday in Baltimore. This one should be for blood and all the money. Well, let me see here. And, but I mean, it wound up being a fantastic game. The Browns would wind up winning at 38-31. A heck of a game. The Browns now have Baltimore, Philly, Washington, Pittsburgh, San Francisco to play in that order before they meet the Giants again in New York on December 6th. The Giants played Green Bay, Chicago, the Cardinals, Pittsburgh, Chicago, the Cardinals, and the Redskins before that meeting in Yankee Stadium. 4 of those games are at home. Doesn't require any actuary to figure out that the Browns would be forced to pay a high premium against disaster long before they take on the Giants again. If the Colts gallop over them next Sunday, that could be off, brother. Still, you have to give the Browns a chance against anybody because of their defense, which is improving every Sunday. In 5 games, they've yielded only 48 points and only 6 touchdowns. The boys up front have been relentless, and the secondary grows surprisingly slicker each week. They can put the blowtorch on Johnny Unitas next week and keep his receivers covered, which is what they did to Ralph the Googe yesterday, and all could be well. The Chicago Bears defeated Baltimore earlier in the season by putting the heat on Unitas throughout. One good piece of news in relation to the future came through as the Browns were leaving the stadium to be smiled upon by fans who haven't been very happy for weeks. Frank Gifford of the Giants, good boy, had been taken to the hospital with torn rib cartilage. And if I seem ghoulish in rejoicing over this, I am pleased only because I know it is not the type of injury which will incapacitate him forever. Just a few games, I hope, give the Browns a better chance to catch up or remain no worse than they are, one game behind. Among the happier Browns last night had to be Milt Plum, who hit on 13 of 18, won a TD looper into the end zone to Preston Carpenter, who caught it as carefully as you would grab a baby who had fallen out of a window. Plum's passes accounted for 253 yards, but I am forced to observe that this is somehow misleading statistic. A great part of that yardage, which was true, was racked up by Bobby Mitchell and Jim Brown after they grabbed flares on screen flips from Plum. In these, the play was the thing, plus the speed, drive, and maneuverability of Messrs. Mitchell and Brown. Mitchell went 76 yards for a score after catching a flare, and that was the opening wedge. However, it is all right with me if Plum goes right on completing most of the short stuff, because I can remember what Otto Graham had to say about this. If you complete the short ones, the long ones will start taking care of themselves, which is true. Right. Flares and screens to runners of such outstanding ability as Brown and Mitchell seem to be a pretty sound approach to the ground gaining problem. Getting those boys loose in the open in any fashion is like turning a bull loose in a china shop. Something has to get busted wide open. Anyhow, the National League football picture has become much brighter from the Cleveland point of view. We're still alive, and while there is life, there is hope. If the Browns can put the bit into the teeth of the Colts next Sunday, they could build to a climax such as they enjoyed in the Eastern Division last year. The climax was first-rated entertainment, even if it finished was a dull thud. Yeah, team, fight. Yay, team, fight. Now, this is right here. This is the one that hits the upright right here. So close, but not close enough was Redskins Sam Baker's attempted field goal. The ball hit the goalpost and bounced back onto the playing field. This was the one that he missed. This was the first one. This could have gave the Redskins, I think, a 3-0 lead. But had they scored, right, if the score was 20-7 going into the last period, that probably wouldn't have mattered much. But this 3 points right here could have, if it went through, would obviously gave 3 more points. When they got down to the 10-yard line earlier, and I guess it was the second quarter, instead of trying to go for a touchdown on 4th down, they kick a field goal, they got another 3 points. So it could have been like 20-13 going into the fourth quarter. Might have been a different game, might not, but they would have only been down by 1 score. But that's the one that just hits the upright right there. It's a picture. And then we got a picture here. All on the end zone. The Browns' Preston Carpenter catches a 12-yard pass from Milt Plum in the final quarter. Redskins chased Plum around in his backfield before he spotted Carpenter unguarded. That's the one he caught just like a little baby. Like a little baby. All right. So let's see what we got here. We got next, we got the Plain Dealer. October 26, 1959 edition of the Plain Dealer. All right, I got to find it. October 26, 1959, the Plain Dealer. All right, here we go. Plum pitches 4. Browns win 34-7. This is that Bobby Mitchell one. Mitchell on the 76-yard touchdown run right here. And right here. Whoops. Try that again. Washington's white-shirted Bill Anderson snatches the ball from the hands of the Browns' Junior Wren on the 4-yard line. Ralph the Googe drew the 31-yard pass, but the Redskins failed to capitalize on it, for they were pushed back to the 11-yard line in the next 4 plays. So this is the play that in the first quarter they got down to the 4-yard line and they couldn't score. Could have changed the outcome, and possibly could have changed the outcome of the game. But Mitchell gets 2 as the Skins fall. Mill completes 13 of 18 passes for 253 yards. The Browns brighten the rain and gloom of the stadium yesterday with the best performance of the season, showing 42,732 hardy fans new offensive sparkle and a stout defense. They defeated the Redskins 34-7 to move above the 500 mark for the first time. That 3-2 record is good for a second-place tie with the Eagles in the National Football League's Eastern Division. The Giants are 4-1. The improvement has come at an opportune time too. Next Sunday, the Browns face the Colts, the world champions' backyard. There probably isn't a tougher assignment in football. Plum connects for 13 of 15 passes. Most pleasing aspect of the Cleveland victory over the Redskins, who showed little offensive fire, was the performance of Mill Plum. He threw 4 touchdown passes, accumulating for 253 yards. The former Penn State star. Hold on a second. Let's see. Penn State star who watched his college team down Illinois on Saturday missed connections on his last 3 throws. Then he hit the target on 13 of the next 15. Somewhere during the week, the Browns also forced that long-range scoring punch, which has been missing. All 5 touchdowns were from the 10-yard line or outside. Bobby Mitchell, who scored twice, registered the first points on a play good from 76 yards. The swift halfback from Illinois grabbed a flare pass from Plum. Lou Groza gave him a running room with a block, and the secondary couldn't catch him on the sideline jaunt. Groza had that extra point bid blocked, and it loomed important at the time. The toe hit on the other 4, however. Mitchell's other touchdown came in the third quarter on a screen pass, which worked just as it had so often in the rehearsals at League Park. With the count 3rd down and 8 on the Skins' 15, Plum rolled out to his right. The Washington defense flowed to that side, neglecting Bobby all alone in the middle of the field about the 17-yard line. Mitchell took the pass, sized up the broken field ahead, and threaded his way into the end zone. It was a big touchdown coming early in the second half and giving the Browns a 20-0 lead after the extra point. The other Cleveland touchdown was scored by Preston Carpenter on a 12-yard pass into the end zone by Plum and Ed Modzelewski on a 10-yard flare from Milt. Those came in the last quarter. Jim Brown also enjoyed a good afternoon, bursting outside left for 30 yards in a second quarter score. The big fullback rolled up 122 yards despite the concentrated defense and now has 559 yards for the season. Whew. So in 5 games, he has 559 yards rushing. Unbelievable. All right, let's see here. Let's go to the next page here. Next page. All right. So we're going to go once again to the Cleveland, the Plain Dealer, the October 26, 1959 edition of the Cleveland, of the Plain Dealer. It's like a Cleveland paper. All right, here we go. All right, so we got column 6. Whoops. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. Plum hurls 4. Ralph the Googe started and went most of the way at quarterback for the visitors. The Columbus boy who played his football at Notre Dame hit Bill Anderson in the end zone for 28 yards in the Skins' lone touchdown in the third period. He hurt an ankle in the first quarter, and it became more painful as the game progressed. Eddie LeBaron, the veteran passer, is still on the mend from an ankle sprain suffered last week, and Coach Mike Nixon didn't want to risk further damage. So Eagle Day, the third-string quarterback from Mississippi, finished the game. Plum did a great job on improvising on the touchdown pass to Carpenter in the fourth quarter. He started to roll to the right, but the Skins broke through and seemed to have him cornered back about the 25 for a big loss. But Milt eluded the charging line, broke toward the center of the field, and spotted Preston all alone in the end zone. He threw a perfect strike, and Carpenter took the ball from a Yogi Berra crouch. The Browns' defense also was sharp in the victory, with Jim Schaffner twice stopping drives with interceptions and the line making a goal line stand in the last minutes of the first half. Schaffner, filling the corner position held down by Don Paul last season, intercepted a googe pass on the Skins' second play from scrimmage. The Texas Christian graduate returned that one 30 yards to the Washington 47. Jim made his other interception, a leaping theft, late in the second quarter. The googe seemed to have Johnny Olszewski loose inside the 15, but Schaffner came from nowhere to snag the ball and race back 20 yards to the Cleveland 31. With less than 2 minutes remaining before the half, the Browns presented their guests with another scoring opportunity. Sam Baker's punt touched Francis O'Brien downfield to block for a return, and Amel Karras recovered the free ball on the Cleveland 35. The Gooch took advantage of the opportunity with a pass to Anderson, who was dragged down by Junior Wren on the 4. So it was first down and goal to go for the Redskins. At that point, the Browns' lead was only 13-0. A touchdown right there could have been huge. Dick James, a hard runner, was good speed, first was sent to the outside. Bob Gain and Bernie Parrish turned in the play beautifully, and James was thrown back to the 5. The Googe second down pass intended for Anderson almost became Schaffner's third interception. Then the quarterback tried the rollout and was thrown back to the 10 by Galen Fiss. So he took to the air on fourth down, but the pass was incomplete, and the Browns took over. The Skins, a team noted for its ability to grind out yardage and hang on to the football. You got there's some stats right there. Made only 244 yards. They accumulated 153 on the ground and only 91 yards passing, with 8 completions and 19 throws. Sam Baker missed connecting on a 41-yard field goal for the Skins' only first quarter threat. That thrust to the 4 was the only big scare of the second period. Then in the third period, with the Browns holding a 20-0 lead, the visitors moved from their own 29 to their lone touchdown in 8 plays plus a 15-yard penalty against the Browns for a personal foul. The Skins never threatened in the final quarter. In fact, Paul Brown was able to test the part-time performers through much of the last period. Jim Nanowski took over at quarterback for the first time since the third exhibition game and did right well. The former Michigan State quarterback completed 3 of 5 passes for 41 yards. He also broke loose for an 11-yard gain after wriggling free from 3/4 of the Redskins' 11. 7 receivers took passes, with Mitchell, Bill Houghton, and Ray Renfro grabbing 3 apiece. So all in all, it was a good afternoon for the home club. And next come the Baltimore Colts. And once again, you see the stats here, the rushing stats, the receiving stats, which is not a good game for the Redskins. Now, as I said, had they scored a touchdown early on when they were down 13-0, they got down to the 4. They had 4 plays to get it, and they punched it in there. Might have been a different game. Who knows? If Sam Baker's kick didn't hit the upright from 41 yards out, they tried a field goal there. That would have made it made it 13-6, maybe a little different game. Who knows? But one thing's for sure, that without question, this is one of those things that the better team on the field that day won, and they won by quite a bit. This was just the beginning of the free fall for the Washington Redskins, and the Cleveland Browns, as they did almost every year, hung around at the top of the division. But as I showed you before, those 3 losses that they had in a row toward the end of the season did them in. So that's the way it was on this date, October 25th, 1959, as the Washington Redskins took on the Cleveland Browns at Cleveland Stadium. Pro football, first 50 years. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.